This is our how COVID-19 has impacted HR practice. And I think this is a brilliant topic to be having the opportunity to talk about. And for my entire career, it feels like we've been trying to justify HR's existence and prove that we are equal at the top table. And at least we have moved on from the conversations I remember right at the beginning of my working life when it was about, is HR a profession? We do seem to have been accepted as that now, but it's still a lot of those conversations around, making an impact, whether we're valued. And some research has just been or whether it's research as such, surveys just been carried out by Sage People, which very fortuitously was published today. And they have found that when they have surveyed organisations, 59% of HR leaders felt they now played a more influential role in the company. And 87% that felt that changes to the HR function had been accelerated due to the pandemic, which, personally, I think is brilliant. It means, we're actually making things happen. However, actual 57% of C-suite executives still saw HR's function as largely administrative, and their perception of HR hasn't changed. So we've got a mismatch still. We're thinking as a profession, we've had a greater impact and, we're doing more, but actually that's still not being recognised as a generality with other senior people. So I think perhaps part of the conversation today is to think about, what do we have to do? Where do we need to deliver that actually that makes it recognised and valued by other members of the executive team. And over the last year, we've had in HR so many different demands. So depending on your organisation, you may have seen workload shoot through the roof. You may have seen it, just disappear overnight, or it's an organisation where you've just had to work differently. You've had a workforce and our own resources that are severely stretched. We've seen a lot of talk about mental health, general well-being, a lot of focus on that. So we're dealing with a workforce that have got very different needs, a lot of anxiety. And we're often being expected to answer questions that actually nobody's got the answer to, that, it adds stress and pressure to us. So these are the how we promoted as the discussion for today. What new initiatives and policies have been implemented by forward-thinking organisations, and we very much have these discussions around discussions because it's sharing what you've done, what's been working well. I was just thinking about all the different aspects of it. When we're looking at our HR strategy, where are all the areas that we are having to put attention? Where do we need to prioritize? And some of that will be unique to your organization. I mean, this was just my brain dump of different things. Some things were high on our organizational agenda anyway. Some organizations were in, struggling for a skills shortage in the sector they were in. Some people, have seen having to lose a lot of staff. So lots of changes, the mental health became much higher on the agenda. I mean, it's an area that I do a lot of work on, delivering training, but it's now become part of everyday vocabulary in the way it wasn't a year ago. We saw a much greater focus on diversity and inclusion. Again, rightly, in the last couple of weeks on these sessions, we've been talking about how we maintain a focus on those two areas going into this year. The area around, the social capital, the shared understanding of how we work together, whatever your talent strategy is. Though there's so many different ways that we need to be putting our attention. So how do we decide the best ways where we can't do everything all at once? So the questions I would like, or I'm suggesting that you consider is, in the last year, what are you doing differently? What has been working well, and how can you build on this? So what I would like to do is we'll put you into groups. I've got 21 of you now, which is great. So I'll put you into groups so you can discuss and share, and then we'll allow time to come back and, we can collate all those ideas. so you can go away with things. But it is about being forward thinking, you know, how we really are going to make positive impact, positive change, and help the organisation adapt to the climate that they're operating in, which obviously will be unique to you, but some shared issues. So let me stop the share. You just made a note of those. The general area of discussion, how you approach it is, you know, is really up to you. So stop share. And how many rooms should we have? Right, I'll put you into 4 rooms. That gives you 5 people in each room. And how are we doing for time? I want you to have a good, so we'll give you 15 minutes to have your chat within your group to really share your ideas, and then we'll come back and bring those ideas together. Okay, so we'll see you then. We may drop in and out to see how you're getting on. Okay, so hopefully you are having a good discussion. And certainly the room that I joined was having a good debate. So let's see what ideas and thoughts. So what we're trying to do is collate a list of the forward-thinking ideas that actually have made a difference. Well, our conversation kept coming back to COVID and testing and vaccines. We were also trying to think a bit wider than that. We were saying one day we'll have a conversation that doesn't get back to COVID in some way or another. But so group 4, which is, I haven't got everybody's name, but Alison, Anna, Caroline, would one of you like to share the gist of your discussion?
I'm happy to, if
thank you, Claire.
Unless somebody else wants to take part. So we've in our group we've got a number of people from different sectors, from hospitality to education. So it's impacted people differently. Some of the ideas that came up, especially from college, was thinking about new provisions, because they've not only got students that are impacted, but also members of staff. So they put together an agile working plan that's not only working now, but also for in the future, especially towards back office staff. And unfortunately, education facilities have had to be very reactive, with sometimes not a lot of notice. So it's putting things in place with regards to teaching online, but also having the flexibility for their members of staff as well. One of the ladies works at IBM, and they've always had the opportunity to work from home. But what became really important for them as a business was mental health and making check-ins more important with their staff. One of the other ladies works for a small manufacturing business, and bless her, she started only 12 months ago. She's a standalone HR manager, so she started within that organisation right in the middle of the pandemic. So they quickly decided to put in a desk booking tool to minimise the amount of staff on site at one time, so a hot desking, and also taking into account not only how many people are sat in the office, but how many people are going into the smoking shelters, into the canteens, and things like that. And they also had a change of shift patterns as well, so there wasn't so many people working. And then Caroline worked within hospitality, so it was all around how to have effective communication and actually recognising the different demographics that they've got working within hospitality. They tried WhatsApp initially, but unfortunately that ended up becoming more of a problem because of the different times that people work within hospitality and being inundated with messages at ridiculous times of the evening. So that became a problem. So they actually looked more at marketing campaigns to get the message out to people, but also to take the pressure off them from not having to respond, and the pressure off the managers by not being inundated with 50 plus messages, and recognising that different groups of people use different forms of technology. So the younger demographic don't necessarily check their emails. They're probably more interested in Instagram or Snapchat or whatever else is out there. I'm one of the older demographics, so I don't really fully understand all of these new social media platforms. So there was quite a lot of interesting information and facts that came out of our group. So thank you very much.
Thank you. comprehensive feedback. Thank you very much. And group 3 was Helen, Ian, Paula, Nicola, Valeria.
Yeah, so we have a varied people within our kind of room as well. Working from home seems to be, obviously the big focus, whether it's key workers, and we found that there were maybe less interruptions and kind of face-to-face kind of distractions, so kind of a bit more productive, but have found increase in workload due to different things. What we found in our organization is that we've got a bank of toolkits that we use, and we put people towards to say, here is a list of what you need to do. Go and have a look. If you need any help, give us a shout. That's the initial bit. Go and have a look, do it yourself, which releases us from doing the basic tasks of have you done X, Y, and Z? And that's not just for COVID. We do it for like your performance, your absences, things like that. So like flow charts, letter templates, anything that we can trust them to have without our involvement. Then they can use that as a guide, and the flow charts take them to certain bits and when they need to speak to us as a must. So we found they've been very handy to try and release our time to focus on the more important stuff that come through and the priority things as well. People are working faster, harder. Technology's increased as well. A change in culture and how people do things, using EAP, occupational health, and having some downtime together as teams or groups rather than talk about work all the time. Having that time made just to go, have you watched this on the telly?
You talk about changing culture. What specific things were you actually doing to engender that change? Don't know whether that was you or somebody else in your group. Not really to put you on the spot specifically.
Yeah, well, I didn't mention that one. That was just an overview of one of them. I think it was it Valeria that mentioned it?
Thank you. There was some good lists. The EAP, so that was about actually encouraging take up of it, because generally that seems to be fairly low. Lots of companies have it. Okay, I like the toolkits, and releasing your time for other things. The business critical things. Thank you. And group 1 was John, Sarah, and Inga. I think, John, you're talking, but you're on mute.
Oh, yeah, it's good to come off mute, isn't it? I didn't even realise I put myself on mute. We covered 4 topics really, and I think people have mentioned them already. Mental health was one that people are doing more around the flexible working, assistance, EAP, which I think has already been mentioned before. We had a topic that covered things like testing, whether you can force people within employment to do testing, and maybe using health and safety as a reason to do it for all your employees. And then vaccinations, we had a bit more of a conversation on that one, because we're not sure whether you can ever force people to have vaccinations for one reason or another, with what's going on at the moment. And then again, we covered off meetings, more around not just the formal meetings, but the socialising to sort of keep the teamwork going and everything else. We covered that one off. And it's just really different approaches that people were trying. And then working from home cropped up as well, which I think somebody's already mentioned. And again, a mixed approach. One of them was that the team in the care home side, those that were working in the office and those that were working from home, all were on Zoom so that they could actually keep that teamwork going. And those were the main things that we covered, which I think everybody else has covered off already.
So the other thing that was mentioned when I dipped into that room was about your specific support groups, the one that you had support groups for working parents and different groups of employees, which I thought was quite a nice one. And then one other group, Natasha, Flo, Pam, Sarah.
We, now that we're working from home, it's really more difficult anyway for the other people to realize the job that you're doing, right? So once a month we have our organization team meeting, and yesterday, for example, each team made a presentation about what we are doing, what we've achieved in the past 9 months, and what we are going to try and work on when we're going to go back to the office, whenever it will be, right? So yesterday we came out from the meeting, me and my team and the others, and said, wow, that's great to know what the other people have actually done. And actually, either if we were working from home or if we're working from the office, because you try not to have silos, and we don't have silos any longer since where we used to be a few years ago, but still you don't know 100% what the other people are doing. So sharing what you do can actually help in realizing that, oh, maybe this request should have been sent to another person, to another department, rather than coming everything to HR, for example. On the other hand, I'm also finding really difficult to make people understanding that I'm there, but to be evaluated as well, meaning they just send everything across for yesterday rather than for tomorrow. And I'm thinking, excuse me, I have a life as well,
Yeah,
so it's a change of culture that you have to embrace somehow, making sure, I'm sort of somebody who likes to propose, to do things, and then I'll fight until I actually get them done, because this is my attitude, right? I know that some other teams are exactly the opposite. They, okay, it doesn't get done, fine. So I know that if I want something somehow and at some point, I will get it.
Yeah, thank you. Perhaps, we're sort of going off slightly off track, but I think it's all actually part of the same thing about the forward thinking. Are we, identifying things that we recognize as things that will become issues, proactively raising them and saying, and this is our solution, things that we know are going to become a greater, the career progression, career pathways, how do you map those out? How do you monitor performance in the same, when everybody's working remotely? It's a very different culture. How are you going to be setting that up? The onboarding, offboarding, how are you, making that and measuring how successful that's been? Because, we put things in when we had to quickly, but actually if that's going to become more of a norm, how are we going to make that, a really positive experience? So are we flagging in advance? These are the things that we recognise will become issues, and this is what we're going to be doing about it.
I think interestingly on that as well, it's how do we keep that learning by osmosis piece going on? Because I think that's really tricky right now. If you're in an office, particularly in kind of teams, that person, that career development sometimes comes from seeing what somebody else is doing and saying, actually, I'm really interested in that. Can I, support you with that? Can I learn a bit more? And I think as HR professionals, part of our role is to help with that conduit, how are we going to communicate? Because it's going to be different. How are we going to keep people informed and make that feel like a connected inform? How are we going to keep that really remote virtual workforce feeling like part of an entity? And then how are we going to share those skills that are now going to exist in pockets within somebody's home out with the rest of the workforce? And I don't think there's an easy answer to that right now, because I think we're very early on in, I don't know, there's lots of people on the call, but I think we've probably spent the last 9 months doing our best one impression, kicking like hell under the water and gliding along on the top, not shouting about what we're trying to achieve or the amount of work that we've got on. And that stops you from being able to focus on the future. I think we've now got to switch from that and start to put in place some of those more future focused pieces.
Yeah. One of the interesting bits of information from that survey was that over 3/4 of senior executives felt the amount of work placed on HR departments was acceptable. Now, I don't very often hear of an underworked HR person. And now, again, is that because people don't recognise everything that we do? Are we not talking about it enough? Are we not doing it as efficiently as we might be? Just throwing out there as a suggestion. Are we using automation? What can we be doing in a more forward focused way, you know, looking ahead. I totally get that in the last year, so much of our resource has been firefighting. It's had to be. However, somewhere along the way, we have to find ways of looking forwards as well.
Well, if
I think a good point at the moment is just in conversations, particularly picking up on your kind of chief executive comment, is to be speaking with the senior leaders and saying, you know, how's it going from your perspective, and what are the particular behaviours and the people aspects and some of the ways of working that we really want to keep, because it'd be really hard, you know, particularly when, say, big groups come back from furlough, everybody goes back into the office, that people go, oh, we'll just go back to as we were before, or things could just sort of drift off in unplanned ways. So I think it's a really good time to be, you know, hopefully we're 5 months away or whatever from a more normal situation health-wise, and it's a good time to be starting to plan what are the things that we want to build on.
Yes.
You know, where are we going to have to reskill people if they've been off work for, you know, the best part of the year? Who are the people that have done different things? And if we just put them back in their old sort of box and say, do your old role again, they're just going to leave because they've learned so much after the last year. So I think it's a really great time to be starting to, you know, not that there isn't enough to be doing with BAU work, but starting to just have a few of these conversations.
Yeah. I think that, as you absolutely, the forward thinking bit, a big area that we need to be thinking about is how we are going to reintegrate a workforce that, you know, for a year in many places has been, you know, those that have been carrying on business as usual, feeling that everybody else has been at home being paid for a holiday, and the people at home that have been feeling disconnected, you know, losing confidence. How are we going to get those back together to create a productive workforce to support the organisation going forward? So, you know, if we think of forward thinking, what can we be putting in place or planning now that supports, you know, keeps skills up to date? Because obviously furloughed staff can still do training, you know, how we're making sure. I've heard some horror stories of people that are furloughed and have had like one contact from their company since last April. But, you know, thinking about those things, already planning how you can be reintegrating those people.
It's almost like a whole new onboarding process, isn't it? Because, you know, if you had somebody who was off sick for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, something like that, you would have a very kind of clear pathway as to how you're going to reintegrate them back into work.
Yeah.
You know, but it's the same thing, isn't it? You've got, as you said, you know, people losing confidence and, you know, have not had any training during the time, have not had a lot of contacts, have just not been in, you know, they're not in that groove of working, if you like, and they've just got to be reintegrated again. And yeah, almost like a whole, as I said, a whole new onboarding process.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. You say you have a return to work plan when somebody's been long off sick. What's your return to work plan for furloughed staff?
Yeah.
It's not just the furlough staff. The reboarding also needs to happen for the individuals that have been working from home, because coming back to work, as far as most of those individuals are going to be concerned, they can work from home. So it's about those conversations and communications with those individuals and getting ready for that, to understand how the business wants to look going forward and what's possible. It's going to be really hard to say to individuals, well, actually, we want you back 9 to 5 back in the office, when for the last 9 months they've been able to work from home. So I think getting prepared to have those conversations with both the business and those individuals is going to be really important.
But then also challenging back, do you need them back in the office 9 to 5?
Exactly.
You know, why are we pretending that actually, you know, if it has worked, I don't know, you know, that there's lots of things that we still, you know, the figures around presenteeism and all those sorts of things. But again, if we're measuring performance on output, then so many conversations.
We've got to understand that there will be a hybrid of whatever was before. It's not going to be the same.
Brilliant. So I'm just mindful of time, because we usually wrap up about 15:15. So what I hope, I've made some notes, what I did last week. If I have the chance this week, I sort of collated them into a blog that we then shared. But actually, you know, taking some ideas away from either your group and from the combined list. But I think, you know, from listening to discussions, reading that survey, you know, it's about the forward thinking. What can we be doing to demonstrate forward thinking? So, you know, we don't hit some of the challenges in the future that we might do if we don't think about the things now. And certainly I think those last ones we were talking about are ones where we can, you know, tick lots of boxes in terms of the forward thinking, the supporting the CEO, you know, as Ian said, you know, what's keeping him awake at night. And, you know, looking at those different areas. So let me just to bring this back up, just as a reminder. Some of you, just before we close, some of you may have done the self-care session I've run recently, and we are rerunning that with through HR Recruit in a few weeks, and I've forgotten the date off the top of my head. But I am also offering this as a complimentary session for HR teams. So it's just something I'm doing as a recognition that actually the impact on HR has not hugely been acknowledged. So if you're interested in that, obviously, please just get in touch with me. If you're a small team, I'm doing a few where I'm just sort of mixing a few teams together. So obviously you can contact me via HR Recruit or LinkedIn or whatever. So if I pass back to Claire, if you would like to wrap up and do whatever you need to do to tell people about the next ones.
Of course, no problem at all. So I'd just like to thank you all for attending today. I know that I've taken some really great ideas away from this session, and I hope you have too. Just to make you aware, we have recorded this virtual boardroom. Unfortunately, it doesn't record the virtual breakout rooms for obvious reasons. So what I'll do following on from this is to send you all an email to direct you towards the video link, and also to our newly created membership page where you can share ideas with HR peers around the UK. I'll also add information with regards to Marion and also the Self-Care Power Hour, and add a link to our events that we're planning on running for February, which also includes self-care, which we had a fantastic uptake for at the beginning of January. So I'll pop all that on an email to you following this video chat today. But if you do need anything at all in the future, or if you've got any ideas about future boardrooms with something that you may be struggling with at the moment, then please don't hesitate to contact me. But I'd just like to thank you all very much for your time today, and just take care of yourselves.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Take care.
Nice to see you all.
Bye.